Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Men After God podcast, where we're trying to equip you as a Christian man to achieve success with a thriving faith and family. I can't wait for you to meet our guest today. His name is Logan Wolf, and he has got a fantastic testimony and story about how he is doing what God has called him to do. We're going to talk about some recent things that's come into his life about being an intentional father and how that's helped him. And then for our subscribers, guys, listen, you're not going to want to miss this. He has read the book on what one of our coaching programs is on about having a 168-hour schedule. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in this episode. But for our subscribers, we're going to dive deep on exactly what that looks like. Hey, listen, if you're interested in subscribing, don't forget, go to patreon.com/menaftergod. You can sign up there, $8.33 a month for founding members. That closes down in December. So it's just a couple months away from when you're hearing this. And as this launches, we're going to shut that down, $8.33 a month. And you get a free piece of merch. You get coaching calls, you get exclusive content, so much stuff there. I hope you'll sign up. But hey, Logan, man, thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for making time for it.
Hey, man, I am so happy to be here. I appreciate your thinking of me and reaching out and inviting me to participate in this conversation. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, I saw you on Facebook, I think it was, and it was you were sharing something about a podcast that you've launched, right? And so now give us a little, let's do this. Go talk for a little bit for me. So I'd love to hear, let's talk about who you are, talk about your family, and then go ahead and lead into that podcast. And we'll keep talking after that.
So I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina. My wife, Grayson, and I moved to Provo, Utah in 2011 as church planners. So we came out here specifically because of the spiritual context. Provo is the least reached metro in America. It's less than 0.5% Christian. Oh, and man, we came thinking we're gonna jump in and basically preach the gospel. And we were so excited, and we got here and we started in a conference center and slugged it out in the conference center for 5 years. And it was great because that first year, even in the conference center holding those weekly services, no one came. It was just we would go, we would set up, we'd wait by the door. It was time for service to start. No one's there. So I would just preach to my wife, and she would just sit.
She would preach to you.
She would just sit there. And at the end of the service, I'd be like, every head bowed, every eye closed. And
Amen.
Like,
Amen. Call her to repentance, brother.
I was like, I see that hand. And she's like, what are you talking about? So anyway, so we did that for 5 years in the conference center. We absorbed a church after that and ended up getting 2 buildings, one here in Provo, right across from BYU, and then one in Salt Lake County, about 45 minutes away. And ended up bringing on some part-time staff, was multi-site. I was running back and forth between those buildings for the services. And we did that for 3.5, 4 years. And then at that point, looking out, I remember one Sunday and just realizing we are not making disciples. Like, we're not, this is a poorly produced, underfunded one-man show. And it's just not making a difference. And so we actually offloaded all that structure, those buildings, phased out the staff. And for the last more than 4 years now, we've been doing house churches, equipping people to make disciples who make disciples. And it's been incredible. We're seeing it spread across the state, spill into other states. And it's been insane. So to your point, so now since being here, my wife and I, we've had 2 children in Utah. We got 2 boys. I got a 6-year-old son named Jacob. I got a 3-year-old son named Benjamin. We call him Benny.
Oh man, great ages.
Yeah, I love it. And then looking back this last season, I basically realized I would do everything different. I would do everything differently if I knew what I knew now. I would do nothing the same. Right. And so I started that podcast just this year called "Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter," a 1,000,000-part series. And basically where I'm just looking back and just sharing lessons learned and things I would do different. I've even got some other voices on there, some other guests, and they're sharing their experiences. We've got some stuff lined up, and it's the feedback from that's just been incredible because people, people want that kind of vulnerability where they can say, okay, you don't have to have it all figured out all together to move forward. What can I learn from your experience? I don't want to go down that same path. And so anyway, it's just been a really good experience for us.
Dude, I love that. And I love that, you're talking about imperfect action, right? We just take imperfect action. Something we
Yeah.
talked about on the podcast early on, like what you're seeing right now, like this is imperfect action. This isn't the background I want. This isn't the studio I want. I want the $1 million studio. I want the great background with awesome designs. I want the lighting and the camera and all that stuff. And we're blessed with great equipment, but if we waited and waited until we had exactly everything we needed, sometimes that's not going to happen. So we just take some action and get it going, man. And then, I'm listening to a book, success follows success, and you can have success without everything that you think you need. But learning from others' mistakes is so vital. What I love about church planters, right? I have a heart for church planters. I think I really relate to them well, just that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive. Because what you talked about there, you went to a brand new city you'd never been to before. And let's talk about this and just let's talk about this in secular terms, right? Like you started a nonprofit in a city you had never been to before, and you were getting no traction whatsoever, right? But then another nonprofit comes to you, you absorb that, right? And now you have this, functioning, right? When I'm going to use the term successful, because you were looking at it saying this is not successful.
Not successful, but it was functioning. You're right. Yeah.
It was functioning, right? It was functioning. And then you're like, this isn't it. And so then you just switched gears, but you kept going. And that's that entrepreneurial drive and spirit I think all Christian men need. And as we go through that, it's good to have that guidance and coaching and stuff that even you're providing and we're providing for guys that are wanting to have success with it.
And that's huge. Family. I think sometimes, brother, we can be persistence for the sake of persistence is not the goal. Like we want, like, what is the big picture, the big thing we're running, and the persistence towards that is what we're after. And so for our story, like persisting and what wasn't working would not have been success, right?
Yeah.
Continuing to slug it out in the conference center with no one but me and my wife is not success, but bless God, we're being faithful and persistent.
Amen.
That's not. So there has to be, like, if you have this big why, why I'm doing this in front of you, this big goal in front of you, and moving towards that's the goal. It's easy to change gears as needed because I have something bigger calling me than just the immediate. Does that make sense?
And yeah, absolutely, man. I've told our church when I got here, I said, listen, we're going to do things, and then if it doesn't work, we're going to do something different, because I don't bang my head against the wall trying to break it down. If me banging my head against it isn't working, let's go get a wrecking ball, right? Let's get whatever's going to work, right?
Yes,
and that's how you find what works. I was listening to a book, and it was talking about success. He said, there's no such thing as an overnight success. And the same is true as a father. The same is true as a husband. The same is true as a church planter, a business owner, an employee, whatever. There's no such thing as overnight success. There's tons and tons of hard work and failure until one day that idea worked. Right. Why did it work? I don't know, but it worked. I heard a quote. He said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. I'm like, that makes sense, right? So being out there, man, let's talk a little bit about the environment you're in. Like, again, I was talking to you before we got on here. When I think of Utah, like it's like Mormons everywhere. There's encampments, and you're just have a battleground, and you're having to go after them and stuff. And if we watch some of the documentaries and things that are out there on Mormons, you find a lot of negativity, right? And I mean, of course, doctrinally, we're going to have differences and stuff, right. And then you find the fundamentalists and things that are there. And so talk a little bit about what it was like to reach people that have had, because this is always my interest, people that have been taught something drastically different and wrong from the Bible, and showing them the truth of the gospel and who Jesus is.
Yeah, I think for one of the things I had to learn is because before we moved to Utah, I was reading everything I possibly could on Mormonism, stuff written by Mormons, ex-Mormons that became atheists, Mormons that became Christians, Christians who'd never been Mormons. I was meeting with Mormon missionaries. I mean, I was like trying to learn as much as I could.
Yeah.
Reading about it and then living among it, two totally different things. And I made the mistake of taking Orthodox Mormonism, the doctrine, and just assuming every Mormon believes that to the same degree or is aware of it, right?
Yeah.
Which is so foolish because that's not even true in our Christian churches, right?
No.
You gather 10, 20, 100, 200 people together. No one's going to agree on everything. And so it's so foolish. So I was coming at people not as individuals, as people, as a person, but as this like generic Mormon, And so there was this really quick, I kind of had to learn, okay, you actually have to make this relational connection with people and get to know people's hopes and fears and dreams and all that kind of stuff. And that takes time and energy, right?
Absolutely.
So that was a big piece for us. And then, it's been incredible. I do love living here, because I feel like Utah's somewhat a bubble within our country. So it's probably spared us some of the things maybe others have had to deal with in different ministry contexts across the country. So that's been great. But then at its core, like you just said, people who have not been exposed to Mormonism, there is this deconstructing that I think has to take place. And you rarely do that in one conversation. And so, so there is like, someone's not going to abandon their worldview and a 30-second conversation at their doorstep.
You know what? Maybe if you tried to debate them on Facebook.
I have seen tremendous success.
I don't know why we all try that.
Hilarious.
Why hasn't that been done before? Because there's a novel idea: debate people about their theology on Facebook. It'll work. That's it, right?
But here's what's so cool is we're seeing Mormons leave Mormonism and come to Jesus, a biblical understanding of who Christ is. And statistically, from what I understand, it takes 17 clear encounters in Utah. It takes 17 clear encounters with the gospel for a Mormon to come to Jesus. But you don't know which conversation you are.
Yeah.
And so you have to. So the thing we just tell our people here is you just need to be a good steward of whatever step you are in that person's life, which means not having the debate and the arguments right on social media, not turning it into a heated thing, not being the jerk that burns the bridges. Right. And man, that's been a big lesson for me too in this I just want to be a good steward of this moment here with this person, an individual, and whatever God's doing in their life at this time.
Man, I love that. No, it's so good just on the topic of evangelism for everybody, because everyone you interact with at a different place in their relationship with Jesus. That's not only true with people who are followers of Jesus, but people that aren't followers of Jesus.
Right.
Some people are hostile. Some people are indifferent. He's obviously, his name's been in the news in the Baptist world, Rick Warren. And, he's controversial in some ways, but there's some good things he's put out there. One of the things that I found useful in explaining this in one of our seminars at church is, I can't remember what he calls it, but it's basically got from -5 to +5. And on this scale, it's like 0 is ready to receive Christ. And then 1 is ready to disciple, all the 10 church discipleship, all this stuff, right? But -5 is, hostile towards Christianity. The -4 is like indifferent, and it just goes through there. And so that's so important. I would think, it would definitely be important out there.
Well, and it's been learning that has been, and stepping into that, the stewardship of the moment has been so free. Think of Acts 19, where you have Paul preaching, and there's multiple responses to his preaching. It says some people mocked him. It says some people said, we want to hear more. And then it says some people believed, and then we're given the names of the people that believed. And it's, there used to be a time if someone mocked or something, I would fall into I tried it. Well, we're going to debate this out until you see my point. We're going to argue this out. But now there's such freedom in if I'm just stewarding the moment, I don't have to carry the burden of this. I can't save this person.
No,
so I don't have to carry that burden. And if they're if they are hostile and they're mocking or joking or whatever, great. God, either they're ignoring God or God's not currently working in their. So I just go on to the next person, right? There's not this, I have to win every single confrontation, so to speak. So
let me speak into that for a minute and just take that into relationships. Guys that are listening, hear what he just said, because I like to say it this way: I don't have to prove myself right. Truth will prove itself right in time and however it comes out. I don't have to prove myself right. And guys, listen, you don't have to prove yourself right with your wife. You don't. If you're right, she's going to know about it. And then you don't have to say, I told you so. But if you do say, I told you so, send me an email. We'll set up a counseling appointment. But you don't have to prove yourself right. Truth will do that. The Holy Spirit will prove himself right. He can handle himself. I think sometimes we feel like we have to come to the defense of the Holy Spirit in that way. And he can do it, because if we put the relationship with the individual over the importance of proving ourselves right, that's when I think we can make true advancement for the kingdom with people that are not friendly or ready to receive Jesus as their Savior. And so, man, that is so good. So good. You were talking before we got on here, man, because you got two boys now, 6 and 3, such fun ages. I've got 3 kids. I got 2 boys and a girl, and my middle son is my wild child. So I don't know if your 3-year-old has started showing those signs of the second child, middle child type personality.
Oh yeah.
But 6 and 3 are fun ages, man. You were talking about a book you read. Let's bring that up for a minute, and let's get some highlights from that and how it's helped you develop as a dad.
Yeah, I read recently The Intentional Father, and I was looking up here if I could find the author of it. But anyway, it basically this not it's basically you only have it breaks this down in the book X amount of months with your kid before technically they're an adult and they can go on off to college or a job or whatever, move out, and not wasting those moments, those months. And man, it was a jarring. That reality was jarring to the point of, so there's a poster behind me. It says "My Life in Weeks." I don't know if you've seen this posters. It shows the average.
I've seen it. Yeah. I'm afraid to get it.
It is terrifying. So I have on there marked in blue on those boxes when my 6-year-old will turn 18 and when my 3-year-old will turn 18. And every week when you're crossing off those weeks as it gets closer, like it's a weighty thing to realize this is significant. Like I have to be, like, you're not going to wake up one morning and accidentally say, "Oh my goodness, I'm being a wonderful father. It's happening." Like, like you don't just fall into that.
No, I wish you did.
No, that'd be great. One less thing. Right. So it talked about that, and really, especially stewarding those years as they're becoming, the transition from a child to a teenager, and that kind of handoff between being a mama's boy, and which is great. You're a little kid. Yeah, go to mama. That's awesome. But there comes a point where you're becoming a man and you're growing up, and this significant role of a father and helping you transition. And it was incredible to me to read that. And then in the book, you talk about a takeaway. In the book, it recommends this documentary called The Work.
Okay.
And I think it's like on Netflix or Prime. It's something free. You can watch it. But it's this counseling group that goes into prisons, and they have all these guys in these prisons. And they do this like group counseling with them. And the stories, bro, one after another, of these guys just don't have fathers.
Oh man.
And I was sat there and just wept. Like it was just, guys, and they're like open, big in there for some heinous crimes, and just like no male influence, no father. And the book starts with that illustration, and I think it's meant to be that, like, scare the mess out of you, like, hey, there's a lot at stake here. Don't let your boy go down that route. And so anyway, that was a big takeaway for me, just the purpose and intentionality of it. And coming out of that, after I read it, we did a few things, implemented immediately. Including watching that documentary. I've just scheduled once a month. I'll take my boys separately, and just like a daddy son date. We'll go out and just do something, just quality time now. And I think that'll be more important even as they get older. But I want to go ahead and get into that habit, because I wasn't doing anything like that.
Yes.
And then even bring, I have the luxury of a lot of stuff I do just ministry wise. I can take them with me. And so I do, and I try not to, that's not a burden. Sometimes it's inconvenient, but just to drag them into some of those things, whether we're out prayer walking or in a meeting or something, or helping someone, I'll take at least my 6-year-old with me. And then even in preparation for when they're going to go away, when they're, 18, 19, whatever that ends up being. And with beginning even now, kind of anticipating setting aside a little bit of money every month, just for whether that's a gap year or college or something, just to bless them as they go out, but just really anticipating like something purposeful of there's coming a day they are leaving. Are we going to make that significant? So anyway, that was helpful.
That is so good. My pastor had to work with me when I was younger, just telling me like, hey, don't divide your life. Like, don't have like ministry and then home. Divide that, then there's division, and there's going to be a conflict and a battle, right?
Yeah.
And man, I wish I could say I heard that and was like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm going to live that way. That didn't happen. Well, it took me a while, but within the last year or so, and especially with the developing things for the Men After God podcast, the book based upon you don't know the full story, and I'll have to share it with you offline because I know our listeners have heard it before. But it was understanding that God made us mind, body, and spirit. And I used to draw that with a circle and divide it with a little peace sign, right? And just like, okay, my mind, my body, my spirit. My mind's good, my spirit's a little off, but body's okay. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? And then I realized, like, no, it's all together. It's all together, right? And that I've got to be developing all of those, right? And that's going to make me a better father, a better husband, a better pastor, a better business owner, a better friend, a better follower of Jesus. All these things. So I got to work on all that as a whole person. Well, let's transfer that over into our kids. We got to teach them the same thing. Yeah. Right. And I mean, spending time with them, that's one of the tenets of Men After God, is devoting time to your family weekly. Yeah. And just because you've only got so many weeks. Listen to a great podcast I want to recommend to you and our listeners, the Dad Edge podcast. The Dad Edge podcast with Larry Hagner. Guy does great work, good content. About 3, dude, you podcast, you know what this is like. He does 3 episodes a week.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
I'm barely getting one a month.
I know, right? He's been doing it for a long time, like 8 years. I reached out to him before I launched, and he was gracious enough to have a conversation with me, and I appreciated it. But he's doing 3 episodes a week, great content, has a coaching program, just wonderful stuff. Did an episode the other day, and he said, everybody says like, oh, you got 18 years, you got this, you got that. He said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Because around like 11 to 15 or so, 11 to 14, somewhere's in there, their friends
Yep.
start taking their time.
Yep.
And now you don't have that time. Their friends have that time. And you can't take that. You want them to develop friends, but what are you doing to have that time? You've got to protect your time with them. You've got to be intentional with your time with them. And so Dad Edge podcast, great thing out there to develop as a father. And so, so good you got this when they're 6 years old, man.
Yes,
I love it. So what are, for you, Logan, let's talk about you, man. Let's talk about, because one of the things I want to talk to you about was kind of just development. Yeah. How do you grow? How do you develop yourself?
Yeah. So I take that holistic approach too. So I think sometimes when we talk about personal development, it's like for my career, my job, and that's, I think that's a piece of the person. Right.
Right.
And so I think for me, the whole idea of personal development, I think was first exposed to it. I read a book called Sacred Motives. I think it was by Paul Chapman.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
It is. Okay. Yeah, it is.
I read that in 2012.
That one's good, right?
So right after we moved to Utah, and this idea of these different spheres and realms in life that we are the steward that God's given us, right?
Yeah.
And man, I was like, okay, it's not just like it's not just the 2 out of 3. I guess I'm okay. It's like, what am I? He's given me all these, and the expectation is we care and for all these areas, we serve in all these areas,
right? And
so that was kind of like, I think, a catalytic book for me, and just understanding that. And again, at that point, I'm already. I mean, I'm an adult. You think, I wish I would have come across it sooner, but anyway, it's
right.
So, and then I had just the realization that since we live in this fallen world, and this is a spiritual worldview. But since the world is broken and nothing's perfect, that means there's always room for improvement in everything. Like nothing will ever be absolutely perfect, right? Until Jesus comes back, which means there's always, I can always grow and learn, and I can't ever settle into this, well, I know enough, I've grown enough. I think of that passage in 2 Timothy 4:15, where Paul is telling Timothy, do this, and don't neglect your gifts, don't neglect this. And then he says, and do it in a way that others can see your progress. And so that's the idea of like, keep growing and like, don't be, and so I actually have it written up here on my door. I want to be a better man tomorrow, a better man than I was last year, a better man than I was yesterday. And so it means there's always going to be something I could do a little better in all these areas. And so I think an awareness of that has helped me in this. And then just carving out the space and making time to grow in this. So I'm always reading something on some area of life, whether it's fatherhood, parenting, marriage, ministry, this kind of stuff that I'm doing vocationally, finances, all that kind of stuff. But there's got to be you got to have people speaking into you, or at least reading, hearing, listening to people in those areas that are a little further ahead than you are. Like I don't have it all figured out. I don't know.
Absolutely. Bro, I feel it, man. That's one of the things starting this podcast and our community and our coaching program, and I think a lot of times we look to the people that do stuff like this and like, oh, okay. Cause this is my fear, right? We our brand, After God brand, our Men After God community and stuff that we're doing and growing and pouring into here. My fear when we first launched was I don't want to become, and I'm going to say it this way, I don't want to become the man after God. right? Like, I don't want people like, oh, Dustin's a founder of Men After. He must be the man after God. He's the one to emulate. Like, yo, guys, look, I try. Okay. I try, but I fail a lot.
Right.
And so don't throw me on that pedestal. Don't put any of us on the pedestal. Let's put Jesus on the pedestal and let's all just follow him. Right. Now you're going to see me do some things that are like, yeah, that was successful. Then you're going to see me do some things because I try to be transparent. Like, that was an absolute failure and you should have never even thought about it. And so I'm like, yeah, well, it happens. But I love what you're saying of the holistic approach and the intentionality. You said an awareness of it. I want to throw another A word in there because we like to alliterate. For those that don't know, we're Baptist by tradition. And so alliteration is just part of it. Acceptance, and not just awareness, acceptance. Yeah. Accepting that I'm not perfect, right? You got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with that. Because if you're not, then you're saying you need to be perfect. If you need to be perfect, then you're God. So do you need to be God? And having that understanding really helps us, because when we are not just aware, but we accept, we can then excel. It did start with an A, but it works. It works, right? Yeah, then we can excel by intentionally making time. And one of the things you mentioned that, hey, for our subscribers, we're going to dive deep on whenever we record your episode there, and it is on having a 168. Yeah. Now, if you've listened to our interview with Dan Murray, you know I love a 168. Dan loves a 168. I was talking with Logan beforehand. He's like, hey, I read this great book. I'm like, really? Let's talk about that. So, Logan, I don't remember the title of the book. I think it is like 168 or something. But talk about that book and its impact on your life. And guys, if you're listening to this, Men After God offers coaching to help you develop a 168 and live from it. So, Logan, let's dive in there for a minute.
Yeah. So it's called 168 Hours. You have more time than you think. Yeah. I read it and then I bought the audio version. I bet you I've listened to the audio version 3 more times, like to internalize it. But they recommend in that book, what you're talking about, this taking a week and basically in 15-minute increments, mapping out, marking down, recording how you spend all of your time. And I tell you, that is an eye-opening exercise, because I found, you say, well, I'm working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, or I'm doing this, or I've got, and you look at it like, there's a whole lot of just checking email, or there was a whole, like there was,
I didn't know I had so much Facebook scrolling.
There was a lot of Facebook, there,
right? Yeah.
So it is like, I actually wasn't working as much on high quality, high value activities as much as I thought I would. I tell you what was jarring for me the first time I did it, what was just almost sickening, is how little time I spent one-on-one with my wife.
Oh man, don't go
there. If you had told me, like, I would have said, well, we have a great relationship, and we do. I mean, great relationship, great. But then when you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, it was one of the lowest. If I tallied it all up, it was one of the lowest activities in the week, was one-on-one time with my wife. Yeah. And so coming out of that book, it was like, okay, what do I want my week to look like? And kind of retooling it. So I don't know, are you familiar with Michael Hyatt's ideal week exercise?
So part of the coaching program we have is actually, so listen, so guys, this is a lot. You should be hearing this on October 2nd or later of 2023, just to date it real quick. And our coaching program, if it hasn't launched yet, it's most likely launching early 2024. And inside our coaching program, we have kind of 2, but one of them is to develop the 168. And the other one is talking about the 5 core tenets of being a man after God. And in that, we offer a free Michael Hyatt full focus planner where we teach you how to use it, and you set up your 168 inside of that and then live from that on your day-to-day and then your weekly basis. So yeah, we've heard of it.
Oh, bro, no. Again, those tools mesh together so well. And it is. And again, it'll never, because I've done it and I've revised it and I've done it and I've revised it, and you'll never get it perfect. Again, perfection's not the end here, but it is so helpful to bring that together. And when you realize, oh, I'm not spending enough time with my wife or my kids, or I'm spending too much time doing this activity, and then to have like, what do I want that to look like, and to map it out. And then, man, anytime I find myself like, what should I be doing? I just look at, here's what I said I wanted to be doing at this point. I'm going to go ahead and jump into that right now. And it just brings so much clarity. I think a pathway for how to spend your time on a day-to-day basis. So I love it. I'm
so with the full focus planner, guys, if you've never seen one before, they're in depth, right?
Oh yeah.
And now I hate working in minute details, right? So when I have to do my 168, which I just did my newest one because I do them quarterly, right?
Yep.
I just did my newest one earlier this week. I finished it and put it in my Google Calendar. It kills me having to sit there and just work those minute details out. And then the full focus planner takes me a step further. I'm like, oh, good Lord. Okay. All right. Writing this out. But I say this because I want to bring this up, Logan. Do you use it to its fullest capacity or do you make it work for you?
The planner?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've used because they're set up quarterly, right? So I've gone through half a dozen of them here even lately. I do not use it to its fullest capacity.
Right. Yeah. I don't
there's
either.
so much. And again, I'm more of a big picture kind of guy. So I love, looking
That's
at.
why I hate the details, man.
It is there, but I think it's great because it can be, even if you're not just a big picture guy, you like it'll facilitate that. It'll be as in depth and as detailed as you want to make it.
Yeah.
And I think some people who maybe say, I'm a big picture guy too, you're just not disciplined. And you need
Hey, listen, I'm wearing sandals today, okay? That kind of hurt, Logan. I didn't put my steel toes on for that.
You need some of those details because you just use it as an excuse. But anyway, it's a great tool.
I need someone to work on the details and tell me about it.
There
and
you
that's
go.
why I hired Craig. That's it. Tell me what I need to do here. That's what our executive pastor's for. Shout out to Craig, one of our co-hosts. Oh, man, that's good. Hey, I want to close it out here, man. Let's close out the little conversation we were talking about beforehand. And we're just talking, that just really leads right into where we're at of talking about, I'm not, like, details aren't my favorite thing. And so I find someone that is. Yeah. Let's talk about that, not just as it relates to our own personal lives or our work lives, but our family life too, man. Like, because we're not good at everything, right? I think you were the one that said that before we came on here. We're not good at everything. There's some things I'm really, really bad at. If you ask my wife, I'm really bad at folding towels because actually, okay, she's gotten better with this, but does your wife do this? Like if you fold it wrong, she'll go back and refold it. Right? Guys, if you're listening to me and your wife does that, I'm sorry. All right, listen, she may not love you, but God loves you, and he doesn't care how you fold towels. Okay, so you'll be okay. But yeah, man, no, that is something we're all not good. We're not good at everything. So how do we take that and approach our lives from a Christian worldview and use it to achieve success with a thriving faith and family?
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to explore how God created you and gifted you. And I mean, there's plenty of tools to help to facilitate that. I mean, I think when we were talking earlier, I mentioned, there's the Myers-Briggs and the Strength Finder, and there's the APES test, which is a spiritual
Jordan Peterson's got a personality. John Maxwell's got
There we go. There's
Maxwell disc method,
Enneagram.
We could pick one. Yeah.
I think, man, it was good for me. I went through a number of them and kind of got a look at that. And then, of course, I did some spiritual gifts tests, which all of this, I think, especially from a Christian perspective, should be affirmed by the body. Yeah. So like, if you're telling everybody I'm a teacher, I've got a spiritual gift of teaching, and they let you teach, and they're like, bro, you're not. Like you're like, let's look at something else. Man. That's not your, yeah. So, but then said, okay, this gives you such freedom to run in those lanes. For a long time, I was personal, experience was pastoring. And realized that I wasn't very good at it, and it wasn't my passion. My passion was reaching the lost and helping them reach the light. And there's been this shift now, even in our own ministry, where I've acknowledged that the body's acknowledged that. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I'm actually going to run more over here, where I'm evangelistic, apostolic, equipping, catalyzing these kind of things. And we'll bring people up to fill in that gap, right? So we've seen that play out in the ministry, and you see that play out in your personal lives. Like, okay, if this is what I'm good at, I'm not going to take all my time and energy to, if I'm a 10, 10, 10, and a 2 down here, I'm not going to try to bring up the 2. I'm going to find someone that can do that for me, and then I'm going to focus on what I'm good at, which is the biblical principle of the body, right? You think in Romans 12. Where Paul talks about everyone being gifted a certain way for the blessing of the body and to press into those gifts. Like he says, if your gift's prophesying, you prophesy. If it's teaching, you teach. Doesn't say if your gift's prophesying, but you're really bad at mercy, you should try to get better at mercy. No, he said, do the thing you're gifted, like do what you're gifted in. And that's what he talks about also in Corinthians. He talks about 1 Corinthians 12, 1 Corinthians 14. come in with the one thing you're good at and build up the body with that. And then where you're weak, guess what? There's someone else that can do that better than you. And that, I love that, because it eliminates this idea that it's just me versus the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually part of a much bigger community, a much bigger body. I'm part of a whole kingdom. And I have those resources at my disposal. Am I willing to avail myself of them and say, I can do this? Can you help me do this?
Man, that's so good. And as a guy that's listening to this, that's not a ministry leader, and I know there's a lot of you out there that you are who we are talking to, and guys, I just want you to know that your pastor, he's not perfect and he's weak in some areas, so sure him up. If you're strong in an area, go to him. Hey, pastor, I noticed that you are an absolute awful shepherd and mercy person, but I love it. Right? Because I'm gonna tell you, Logan, like, I'm that way. I'm much more like you, that entrepreneur, that drive, that, hey, let's reach new people. Let's do new things. Let's do this. And let's go. And so that's, we're blessed. I'm blessed as a pastor. I've got people stepping up in a care team and stuff like that. But it's, so it's really cool to see God mold that together. But I don't think, okay, this is Dustinology here. God didn't start working and bringing people that could fill in those gaps until I stopped trying to fill them myself. So I had to accept who I am in Christ before God would allow for that to be filled in. Think of it this way, guys. If you're an employee or if you're a business owner, or you've got staff or anything like that, like, you got a staff member that's probably handling a lot of stuff for you. You got that go-to guy, right? But then your go-to guy goes, for one reason or another, good, bad, and different. What happens? You then get very creative on how to fill that space. And you may have to have multiple people get in there, but what you found is you've got more capable people than you knew. But you had to accept that, this is gone, this is changing, this is what's there. So accept who you are and roll into that. And then be intentional about how you're living your life. And that's where that 168 comes from. And Logan, for me, man, coaching is what helped me get there. A year. I went through a year of paid coaching with a guy, and love him to death. Thankful for him. Had him on as a guest here recently. And now we offer that to people through Men After God. And so I love it. Logan, let's do this for me. I want you to think for just a minute. You got a guy. He's getting ready to have kids, and he's in the business world, right? And he's a follower of Christ. He's busy. Maybe let's go with an HVAC tech. HVAC tech working 6 days a week, man, some 10 to 12-hour days. And like, that's not sustainable. What do you say to that? What do you say to the guy to help him achieve success with a thriving faith and family? Think on that for just a minute. Let me talk to our listeners. Hey, guys, this interview has been just fire. I have loved what Logan has brought to this table. I love his testimony, the story, what he's got going out there in Utah. We're going to make sure to link his podcast and stuff in the show notes. Listen over to it, support him, pray for him and what him and his family are doing out there. I'm really, really excited for that. And don't forget our Patreon subscribers. We're going to be recording and talking about that 168 again. And it came up with Dan Murray a couple months ago. Now it's come up again. I think there's somebody out there that needs to hear this, and you need some help getting there. That's what we're here for. Reach out to the Men After God team online. You can go to menaftergod.org and reach us there. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/menaftergod. And we'd love to connect with you and just help you along your journey as you achieve success with a thriving faith and family. And this is the first time I'm saying this on the podcast. So October 2nd, again, dating this. We'll be making sure to say this a lot going forward, but you need to know that we're here to take the hustle and grind to turn it into success and family time, because we want to see you have a thriving faith and family as you achieve what God has called you to do. All right, Logan, let's talk to that guy, man.
Okay. I think I would approach it two prongs. One, just to challenge the perspective on the circumstances. I wouldn't, we already mentioned it earlier, I wouldn't compartmentalize my life and view it as these different segments. And to that end, if you think when Paul says, he says that this one thing I do, pressing towards, well, he was doing all kinds of stuff. Like sometimes he's working, traveling, he was with people. I mean, it's not like that was the only thing he was doing, was standing on the corner preaching the gospel. But he viewed the entirety of his life in this one, like it was all connected. And so I think that's really important, is to realize it's not work and then marriage and then children and then hobbies. And then like there is an interconnectedness to it. Mm-hmm. And, I can glorify God in all that. That's at 1 Corinthians 10. And I think that is a significant piece, like the work, the family life is all interconnected. I think that's helpful. Then I think a practical tip, a practical suggestion. I watched this video. We showed our leaders this. It's a physics video. It's not a Christian video. This guy had
physics made by God, Christian.
Yeah. It wasn't like a church video. I wasn't saying
right. I hear you.
So this guy takes these dominoes, and each domino is 1.5 times bigger than the previous domino. So the first domino is 5 millimeters tall, and then the last domino in his series is 1 meter tall, and it weighs like 100-some pounds.
Oh, wow.
And he tips this 5 millimeter domino and knocks down this huge, boom, just loud, hits this. And so I showed that to our leaders. And then the thing was, okay, what the application for us was, what is the one thing you could do in this season of life? The one thing that would have the greatest impact on everything else. And I mean, that's going to be different for everybody, but someone in the situation you just described, okay, what is the one thing I could, over the next 3 months, the next 6 months, that I could really focus on and learn or develop or give more time and energy to, that would make the greatest impact at work, at home, in my marriage with my kids? What's the one thing that would have that significant impact? And I'd press into that, whatever that might be. And that might be the piece that you said. It might be, I need to actually realize where I'm spending my time. That might be the one thing. It might be, like, I know I need to schedule my time. It might be scaling back work. It might be, realizing I need to cut back on I don't know. But it'll be what one thing would have the biggest difference across the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's the thing, is a lot of us try to figure out how to solve all of our life's problems at once, when really, like, one
at a time.
Just do one, man.
What's
Get
the
one.
biggest?
The rest will follow. All right, bro. I love it, Logan. Thanks again for being on here. Do a quick promo of your podcast, man, and then we'll shut it down after that.
Yes. Again, you can find us. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. It is Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter, a 1,000,000-part series. Again, my name's Logan Wolf. I think our second season. We've got almost 20 episodes up. We've kind of been breaking it up into phases of ministry. But, man, it has been so helpful. I'd love for you guys to subscribe, listen, give your comments, feedback, ratings, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Go check him out. I know I'm going to subscribe to him. Can't wait. And, hey, we will talk to you next time on the Men After God podcast. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/menaftergod. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.